How to Crack the Code of Men's Feelings. Research explores the double bind that leads to repression. The myth that men are unfeeling creates damaging relationship problems. Daphne Rose Kingma, author of The Men We Never Knew, has said, "We've dismissed men as the feelingless gender. We've given up on them. Because of the way boys are socialized, their ability to deal with emotions has been systematically undermined. Men are taught point by point not to feel, not to cry, and not to find words to express themselves. Just because men aren't adept at expressing their feelings, don't for a minute think that they don't feel, and feel deeply. Many times, men express their feelings using a secret code, a code that even they can't decipher. Men may convert one feeling into another. Men may convert stereotypically feminine feelings such as sadness or vulnerability into feelings like anger or pride, feelings more socially acceptable for them to experience. Men may shift their feelings into another arena. Men may express emotions only in places where they feel safe and where the expression of feelings is considered acceptable. Just look how men act at sports events. It's not uncommon to see them express great exuberance and affection, giving each other hugs and high fives. Football and hockey players, thought of some of the most macho men around, appear quite comfortable expressing their feelings with each other during a game. Where else would you see men slapping each other playfully on the butt? But these same men in another context, and you probably wouldn't see the same level of openness and comfort. Men may experience their feelings through physical complaints. It's not uncommon to see men experience their feelings through things such as headaches and backaches. You may know of a man who gets headaches only on the weekends or becomes sick during vacations. Why does this happen? Because as long as men are working, they can cut off their feelings. Without the structure of work, however, their feelings and needs surface and may be expressed through physical symptoms. Men are in a double bind when it comes to expressing emotions. Although men may not always know what they're feeling, there's one thing they're sure about. They're convinced they're in a major double bind. Society encourages men to express their feelings, but when they do, their partners are often petrified, if not horrified. Women, they may believe, want their partners to show their feelings, but only certain feelings, and only in doses they can handle. In fact, results from numerous research studies as well as clinical experience tells us that men may be right to be wary of women who implore them to show their true feelings. Men who deviate from the traditional masculine norm by being emotionally expressive and talking about their fears are often judged as being poorly adjusted. Men's feelings may take everyone off guard. Part of the problem for some men may be that they have silenced their feelings for so long that they haven't developed resources for handling them when they do arise, such unplanned, unexpected emotion can often prove overwhelming. That's an article written by Barbara Markway, PhD, Living the Questions, and that's a column she has in Psychology Today online. Hello and welcome to the Emotional Revolution of Modern Man podcast. I'm Vincent Hedges. This is a podcast that explores the emotional landscape of men in our society and societies around the world, I would imagine. Today I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Darnell Wright. And Darnell is a musician, a music producer, a writer, a rapper, a scholar, also a father, and also in a long-term relationship, and experiencing lockdown like the rest of us. Darnell had reached out to me after I posted a couple of the podcast, and said he was interested in maybe coming on and sharing with me and talking about our experiences. We had a little bit of technical difficulty at the beginning of our show, and so I've just re-recorded the intro, and now I'm going to just sort of bring us right into the conversation we were having. And I had just finished asking him what it was about the podcast that had sort of inspired him to want to share and be a part of it. And then this was his response, and then the resulting discussion.
Yeah, man, I love what you're doing, man. And like, we need to have platforms like this and discussions. Like you said, we take a stoic approach and we try to push our emotions back and just handle with the problem at hand and just get through it. Just hold it in and just keep moving. So we don't really get an opportunity to address a lot of these things, and causes even more problems down the road.
Exactly, man. I know for myself, like, it wasn't until my first son was born that I actually started to ask myself some questions, and to really, because I started to see myself in a different light, and I wanted him to be a certain way, but I couldn't be that way yet, and so I remember becoming a father was a transitional time for me to start looking inward.
It's a good thing, like, to know when you need introspection.
Yeah.
When you're not able to identify the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's wrong. Something's off.
Yeah. It's like you need that reflection from somebody else, right? Like, we can't just figure it all out. Like, I watched, you had a really cool vlog or a post on Instagram where you were just talking about subjective versus objective in your reality and how you see the world. And I really like that, because I feel that a lot of guys, our sense of ourselves is made up of what we think we're putting out there to the world and what the world responds to us. And there's maybe not as much focus on what's really going on as there is a focus on how well am I showing that things are good and that I'm in control and that I've got this. I was just talking about being a dad and how that really kind of brought into focus a need for change in my life, and that and the close relationship with my wife at the time. Kind of, I don't know, it's weird because in my relationship before we had our first child, I was we were fighting a lot, and that was just the normal. Like, all the boy code stuff was the norm in my previous relationship, my previous marriage. But then when I had my son, I started taking a look at myself, and it was just it illuminated a lot of things. And I don't know if you experienced any of that when your daughter was born, and I don't even know how old she is, but how far along you are, but. I don't know. Can you relate to that feeling of like, man, I really want to change?
Well, I have a stepson too, and he's just turned 11. So, like, when I started living with my fiance and her son, I had to take on a new role and be a stepfather, and it was an adjustment. Like, I had to really look at myself and focus on what kind of message I want to give him, or what kind of impression I want to put on him for his future, So
yeah,
a lot of it I had to check myself and just like really put the message first before anything, like what message I want him to know.
Yeah.
How I want to be.
That's a big step. Becoming a stepdad, especially to a son who's like, he's old. He's old. He's not an infant. Do you know what I mean? There's already a life before you, and there's a father before you, or there's an understanding of a life without you, and then suddenly you're there to like. But you can still see that, like, as the partner, as the stepfather, you still have a really important role to play. But yeah, I mean, that had to be a difficult transition, I would think, from,
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it was just finding where I fit in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because there's already a dynamic there. I
Yeah.
just like um where's my part? You know, like where do I step in? When should I step in? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but it took me a little while to figure that out.
Yeah. It's like a minefield, right? Because there's like so many ways you can kind of wreck it, and
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
you want to be hands off, but but one thing I learned in a parenting class one time is like, even if your kids act like they don't want um, some kind of discipline or structure in their life, they really do. They're crying out for it,
oh yeah,
and like, it's amazing the response. Like, even if at first, if there's a kid who's not used to rules and stuff like that, or a certain way of thinking, at first, I think there can be resistance, but I think like it's actually a way of showing how much you care when you're like, no, I really want good things for you. I want healthy things for you. I want, you know what I mean? So, and what's amazing about that, Darnell, is like how much easier it is to do that good stuff for our kids and for other people. And it's like harder to do the good stuff for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like good food, good time spent, healthy things for yourself, for your mind, body, and spirit, or whatever, That's a funny thing. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we're talking about some of the bigger hurts and the bigger things that are harder to deal with. I know my father was an alcoholic, and he, he was also a pretty sensitive dude, and he, in many ways we were close, even though at some times in my life we were really estranged and things. And I remember he died about 5 years ago, and I remember being really just kind of messed up because, obviously he died, but I was messed up because I guess there was a part of me that figured like that him and I were going to somehow like get to a point where we could actually talk and be in a place where like all the mysteries and all the things he didn't know about me, he was going to know, you know what I mean? But I think like,
yeah,
I think what you might envision might be a great thing with your parents. Like my therapist used to say to me, no one ever has the parents they deserve or they think they deserve, Maybe people do, but not no one, but a lot of times you don't. And anyways, all this just to say, I think like I've been a person who's like, if been looking at the relationships in my life, with my parents, as as just a defining thing for me as an adult man, like, and continuing to look to the way my father was as the way I should be, and when he passed, it was kind of in some ways like letting go of that idea and getting a sense that like in my adult life, there can be a new way of doing things. There can be a new way of approaching my world, but everybody has different parents, I don't know, like, have you? I know that you've had had a pretty good thing with your parents, and you were saying you had a pretty good, I don't know. We talked a little bit earlier, but do you find that much of your childhood, affects your adult life? That you recognize?
for sure, man. Like, there's a lot of ways I looked at things, and then when I became an adult, I realized the way I looked at things had to change in order for me to grow. And it's like I can relate to what you were saying. Like I have great parents. I'm fortunate to have both parents as well. And they always were there for me and made every sacrifice for me.
Yeah, man.
So I'm like eternally grateful for them. At the same time too, there was like as I was getting older and becoming a man and making my own life and everything, I would get frustrated. Like you were saying, like there was discussions I wanted to have, and because I couldn't have them, because anytime we get to a touchy subject, it would turn into an argument.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to come to peace with like maybe those conversations might never happen, and it's like I can't really keep torturing myself because these conversations won't happen. I can't keep judging my father because these conversations won't happen.
Yeah.
If he's not ready for it, then that's for him. That's not his path. That's not what he wants,
Yeah.
So I can't force it.
Yeah.
All I can do is just be the man that I need to be.
Yeah.
And just learn the lessons I need to learn and take care of my family,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be open to it if it can happen, or if it doesn't,
Sure.
then I still have to be at peace.
Yeah, and I really like what you're touching on there, because what it seems to me we're talking about is letting go of control, having control over that relationship. Like, no, you got to talk to me about this now, but being like, no, like it's kind of goes, like with any relationship. Like, I think like trying to control something is part of like, from what I understand, is a lot of times a part of people dealing with fear or anger, right? Like, let's say someone who's a very jealous man, a lot of that is fear of losing what you love. So you try to control the woman in your life or the person in your life, sometimes with parents, like I find I get really, really angry because I wanted them to be a certain way or do a certain thing. But what you mentioned there is like the peace that can come with just being like, hey, that's his path. And that conversation may never happen, And I think so much of the anger and stress and anxiety comes from our own expectations of what it should be, what we should get, how it should be for us, And I think a lot of peace can be found in letting go of that expectation of like, this is how it has to be, like I see it in small things, man. I like, hey kids, we're going to go to the park. And in my mind it's like, yeah, we're going to go play soccer and it's going to be great. And they take forever to get their shoes on and like whatever else, you know what I mean? Now the soccer ball, and you just threw it over the fence. We're supposed to be going to have fun, and you just messed it all up. And my expectations are like, we're going to go to the park and have fun. But my expectations actually detract from going to the park to having fun because I get impatient, I get angry, I try to control the situation, you know what I mean? So this is the type of thing I see in myself, But what you said about letting go of that control and allowing other people to have their emotional landscape, what they can handle, what they want to do, that's really astute, man, and I really appreciate that, for sure. Well, what about our friends?
Well, it didn't take...
Go ahead.
Sorry, but it didn't come like at once. It was a long transition for me to realize that. Like there was a lot of wrestling with my emotions before I was finally able to accept it.
Yeah, and that's it too. It's to use a big cliche, like Rome was not built in a day kind of thing. And I think that's really key too. Is like, I think sometimes in my life I've been like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna tell my wife, how I really feel, and so I make an attempt and it kind of comes out prickly and it turns into a fight. And so then I'm like, well, that's not happening anytime soon again, because obviously I knew it leads to crap, like it's just crap. But it's about the delivery too, right? And the timing and you got to try, you got to keep trying. I'm just not great. Like I'm great at talking about the positive things. I can compliment someone until they're red in the face. Do you know what I mean? I got no problems with that. But telling people things they don't want to hear, the only way I know how to do that is angrily, with a chip on my shoulder, right? It's hard to do it in a spirit of love, and that's the trick, I guess, because I think... And
the worst part is a lot of times we hold it in until it explodes out.
Yes. Excellent point, man. I know this so much in myself because I don't want to rock the boat. I'm going to be the good guy in all this. Yeah. I'm not going to act stressed out. Yeah. Even with my kids, like, put on your shoes, put on your shoes. Put on your shoes, put on your shoes, put on your shoes. It's just that moment happens. You're either I'm totally patient or I'm completely raging out over here. You know what I mean? And so, you're right. It's that, I've heard some people call that stuffing the emotions down. You stuff the emotions and then it gets to a point where it explodes, right? And that's the trick, man. That's the trick. And I know in one of my anger books, actually the one I read from last episode, it talks about how when does the anger start? And the author points to that the anger starts in a lot of the negative thinking way, way back. Like, hey, can you do the dishes tonight? Sure, no problem, I'll do the dishes. But in your mind, you're like, man, I did them last night, And so there's that angry thought. It's a small thought. But it can be the start of that fuse starting to burn, and get closer to the bomb, right? So I don't know if you've experienced that, man, but I know that in myself.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted
to it's crazy because right now I know everybody's dealing with that. Everybody's in isolation.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Just when you got the cabin fever going on, it's just like we get so petty with one another, and just the little things just get carried away.
Yeah. And I think too, what happens when you deny yourself the reactions, like, actually, do you mind if I don't do them right now because I don't want to do those dishes tonight? Like, hey, I did them last night. Do you mind if you do them, kind of thing? I mean, I know we're talking about domestic stuff here, but what I'm saying is what happens when you don't speak up for yourself, where you don't say, it starts to compound, and you're actually denying your own need of like, you know what? I was really just about to sit down and watch this video. I was really just about to do this, but now I'm doing what you want, and because I'm going to be the good guy, I'm not going to even say boo about it, right? And so you're kind of denying your own needs. And then there's a part of you that's like, I can't believe they don't know what my needs are. I can't believe they would even ask me that because I have needs and they don't know what they are. And, they should read my mind kind of thing, right? So it's that thing of just like knowing how to say what you need without shame, and just be like, I'm tired. I don't want to do those right now. No, So sorry to keep using the dishes. I love the dishes.
Yeah, you gotta have some kind of a good approach to it, so it doesn't turn into something else.
Yeah, it's true. Would you say that? Sorry, were you about to say something, my man? I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no.
I was just gonna say, do you think? Would you say that it's true that that guys will often act different around their friends than they would say in front of their spouses and their kids? Is there like a certain? Would you say there's certain ways that we like allow ourselves to be around other guys that we wouldn't around our family, and vice versa? Have you experienced any of that with yourself or with friends?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
Because, like, I don't know. I know it's. I mean, as you get older, it's like becomes more like when you start having friends that are fathers, you start relating. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely found like since I've been a dad and had friends who are dads, like the sexist talk has died down a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like certain, whatever, the dirty talk or like whatever, all that stuff starts to die down as we become older and more mature and stuff like that. I think maybe in my 20s, maybe there was more of a big difference between, the polite guy and the locker room talk, but I think like, as you get older, but even more than that though, it's like when you get together with friends, you think that's a good time to talk about some stuff that's bugging you at home. But I find the most common, if I'm going to talk about feelings, it's pretty much just talking about things that bother you in your like relationship or something, you know what I mean? Or like, like finding common denominators of like, but maybe less of just like, hey man, I'm feeling really sad today. It's usually like a pissy, like, man, work sucks, or like my wife's driving me nuts, or it's always like, it's this like bravado-y kind of thing. But I find it's less, it's not as common for me to have conversations where it's like, hey man, I'm really questioning my validity as a father right now. You don't hear that. Like, we're just like, how are the kids? Good. How are you doing? Good. So I don't know, but maybe that's not your experience. Maybe you have experience.
No, like I've been able to have conversations like that. I think like that's what comes with vulnerability, like anything emotional with men is like anything that's beneath the surface is pretty difficult to discuss. Not many people want to open up like that, for fear of judgment or, like most times you say some shit like that, they'll be like, what are you, a pussy or whatever?
Exactly, yeah. And there's all those, those little things, right? And I think what that is people don't, Like, my dad used to say, if you're vulnerable with somebody, they'll be vulnerable with you. And I think, unless they completely resist. And I think that's what you see. Like, when you're vulnerable with someone and they're not ready to be vulnerable, that's the response you get. Don't be a pussy, or like, oh my God, like, just get over it. Have a beer, like, whatever, So I think that's it. And then that sends a strong message of like, those sentiments are not welcome here. And so then you kind of, it's a learned behavior to just not bring it up. But I do think it's changing. I mean, you and I right now are a testament to that, But yeah, so everybody's at home with their wife and kids, or by themselves. I mean, there's those of us who, have families and we're interacting and there's one thing I was with my wife today, and I was just really thinking about how much support it gives me in a time like this. We're in isolation, but there's some fighting and stuff, but there's so much joy and love. I mean, I even got 3 cats. Like, every room I go into, someone's trying to give me some love. You know what I mean? And it's nice. But then I think about those guys who are alone, and men who have maybe never been able to get their emotional landscape in check enough to have a relationship, or you know what I mean, or to be able to keep their family under one roof. I mean, I've had a divorce. I've been through it. I've seen the deterioration. You've seen the deterioration of a relationship to the point where it's over. And I guess my heart just goes out to people who don't have anybody to really talk to, and I think more and more that's becoming a serious problem, and also, causing mental issue and things like that. It's that extreme loneliness to the point where, if you're someone who can't really talk about your feelings very much, and then also there's no one even that close to you in your life. I mean, it's kind of like a cocktail for kind of like a, just a powder keg of just emotional instability. And I think it's more common than people might want to believe, So,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, stuff I think about is like just generationally. Like, you could say our father's generation, they just had to work, bring home the check.
Yeah.
The mother stayed home and was with the family, so like you wouldn't see the father too much. And when the father comes home and then has to deal with the kids and the wife, stress, they would just go to the bar or just drink, and it would be like, it would lead to this domestic abuse or something like that. And it's just like, it was never an outlet. It was never a conversation. And it was just like, and it's just like, as men, we don't really, there's nothing for that. There's no outlet for us to even address or even make a priority for our emotions, you just have to make things happen.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's, keep calm, carry on kind of mentality, I mean, physically or emotionally, like, how many of us have been in pain and gone and done our stuff anyways? How many of us go to work sick, or like, I'm not saying that women don't do this either, but, I'm just saying, like, or doing stuff where, we just don't, things we're scared to do, or like whatever, we're just doing it anyways. Just keep pushing through. And so, like, that's why so many guys, I think, turn to alcohol or turn to numbing out, because it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to deal with this, then I'm going to numb it out. But it's like what we were saying before, that's a form of stuffing your emotions. And when you stuff your emotions, the end result will always be an explosion at some point, some sort of breakdown where you can't contain it anymore and you end up acting out, whether it is, and unfortunately, when you're drinking, you're susceptible to, making bad judgment calls, man. And so you decide that you're going to say a bunch of really terrible, hurtful things when you're drunk, because in your mind, you're like, this is totally worth the risk. I just need to say this because it's all bottled up. And then bam, you're just like, you level something that's really important to your relationship or your car or like whatever, you just you make that bad decision. And I guess for me, the consequence too of those explosions is you can't always just say you're sorry and everything's okay. Like, when you hurt someone deeply, it takes a while, man, or if ever, to get that back,
Yeah, like I had this jewel. I don't know if I uploaded it yet, but it was about forgiveness,
Mm,
and I was just saying like apologies. Um, you don't automatically get forgiveness for an apology,
mm,
and apologies shouldn't be in order for forgiveness. Like you
yep,
shouldn't be wanting forgiveness when you give off an apology. You should
yes,
be the apology is the first step in making amends. You
yes,
know, after the apology, you have to make things right,
right,
and it doesn't matter whether you get forgiveness or not. You should be aiming to make amends.
yeah, yeah, and
So many people apologize and expect forgiveness right off the bat.
it's so true. Like that, like it's like it's so that they can feel better about it, right? It's like
Exactly,
we don't want to
exactly.
sit with the idea that we hurt somebody, so we're gonna apologize because and you want them to be like it's okay, and then you can just be like, oh, okay, it's okay, it's no harm, no foul. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's all about you, and you're
yeah,
not thinking about the other person.
that's right.
You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? That's what we do. We do that
yeah,
shit all the time.
yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and then what happens then is our kids mimic that behavior. And I remember growing up, it was
Man.
always like, now say you're sorry. Now tell him he's forgiven. Now you're good. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You're like forced to just, forgive somebody else, And I remember thinking that too when it was still stinging, like, and sometimes literally stinging, like he punched you in the face
Yeah,
and you're like, ow,
yeah,
shit. And then they're like, Michael, apologize to Vincent. I'm sorry. Vincent, say he's forgiven. He certainly is not. My
yeah,
face is still burning. You know what I mean? Like, but
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
say it, right? And so that's stuffing as well,
yeah,
right? Because as kids, we were told that,
yeah.
now everything's better now. He abused you, he admitted it, and now you accept him. And it's just like, and we get used to that, right? And that actually, sorry to segue, but it made me, I was thinking before we talked about how sometimes as guys, we think we have to keep these toxic relationships in our life. Like these guys or other friends or girls or women in our lives that conjure up this boy code and make us act in that way. Like, come on, man, we're going to drive 160 clicks in the fast lane, like all night long drinking rye.
Yeah.
You in? Let's do it, and there's some of us who can't help that. Like, well, he's my homie, man. Like, we've been friends for 20 years. Yeah, we're going to do it, or he's going to do it by himself. So I'm going to go and do this, And we take all these risks because we feel like these toxic relationships have to be a part of our surroundings, Which
Mhm.
isn't necessarily so. I mean, you can be, selective, and you can choose the relationships that are going to bring the positive things out of you, and not conjure up all that negative shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Trust me. There's a lot of friends I had to leave in the past just because my life was changing and
Yeah.
I didn't need those elements in my life anymore. Like I still got love for them, but
Yeah.
they knew my life was changing and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
I say peace.
it takes courage, but it is a separating wheat from the chaff kind of thing, because I had to do a similar thing, especially when I ended my previous marriage. And then it's so weird when that happens, because your whole friends all your friends you had as a couple, it becomes this like parting of the
Wow,
Red
yeah.
Sea, right? It's like, oh, so
Mm.
whose friend are you now? Kind of thing. Are you talking to my ex about all her stuff, or are you talking to me? And so then there's this big split down the middle of friends, for me anyways, there was. But also I was recognizing some negative and toxic relationships. But it was amazing that when I started, and I didn't start calling people up and being like, by the way, I'm not going to be hanging out with you, dude, because you're toxic, hang up. It wasn't like that. I just sort of slowly stopped responding, because guys, we can do that, right? A guy calls you, you just don't answer the call. You might see him 2 months later and everything's fine because you just didn't answer the call. You just didn't call back. No harm, no foul, right? But anyway, so I started to change. But, for me to do it, I almost had to become completely introverted. And I just stopped seeing almost anybody for a while until I kind of started to work on myself. And then what was amazing was the friends that were positive influences were the ones that actually weren't self-serving, and they weren't doing everything for themselves. They were the good guys who called me up after 6 months, be like, hey man, are you okay? What's going on? And that was kind of the initiation to like who was still, not like it was a test, but it really showed like people who were a positive person in my life were the people who actually reached out to me later to be like, hey man, what's up? Like, you've been out of the scene for a while. Are you good? And so, yeah. And then I just started working on those relationships over time. But still, I still have times in my life, obviously, where a friendship starts up and within a few months, I'm like, whoa, this ain't good. This guy is off the chain. I gotta stop answering these calls or whatever, So I don't know. It's important to manage your relationships and recognize who's bringing out the good and bad in you, I think,
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of like I really enjoyed your last podcast on anger and how you just read off a list of different triggers.
Yes.
I was like, I love that, and it was just like so important to identify your triggers. And like people might be triggers too. They might.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true. And I think, recognizing what is actually an angry response, more than just yelling, like those passive aggressive responses that we have, like those it's all anger, and seeing like it, I think the chapter's called The Many Faces of Anger. And yeah, it's like, it's so true. And I think, that being our main response to most difficult emotions is anger. And then you have this long list of all these subtle ways we express it. It really can be illuminating. And even though I had done the workbook before, just reading it the other day, I was like, damn, oh yeah, there's that one. In fact, I've already started saying to my middle son, you and I have to stop our sarcastic banter with everybody. So now we're calling each other out on being too sarcastic, and that was sarcasm. Accountability is good, man. It is. It's good. It's important. But yeah. So yeah, man. But I don't know. I think there's lots of guys out there that these concepts are not new to. There's so many of us in and around our ages that are actually, reading about this stuff, looking into this stuff, know about this stuff. I hear lots of people mention inner child work, like it's not like we're not in Stone Ages anymore. Like people do know that there is some accountability needed for your own actions and your own emotional landscape. But, I think there's still a long way to go for a lot of us, right? And I hope for our kids, there'll be less of a way to go and it'll be more the norm to be somewhat healthy, So
yeah.
So how do you
like,
sorry, go ahead, please. Yeah, sorry.
Well, like I was just gonna say, like I feel like there's like I listened to a lot of podcasts and someone was talking about toxic masculinity and virtuous masculinity. And I think we need to when we discuss masculinity and emotions and stuff, I don't want, and like being stoic, I always want to make sure that I discuss, like, I want there to be a balance. I think it's mostly because there's an imbalance, we push too far away from emotions and we're afraid of addressing our emotions. I feel like there's a place and time to push emotions back, but we should also like make time to address the emotions when it's when we're not in jeopardy, when it's not triggering, when we have time to calm down and stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
But I don't like we have to be more in control of it and learn how to use our emotions and not be in control of or not be controlled by our emotions, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I think there's a problem where there's a lot of discussion of the toxic masculinity and not enough of the virtuous side of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great perspective to put on how to look at it, because like some people respond to like, yeah, but men need to be men, and here's to that for sure. Like you can't tell men that they stop being men. It's an important part, and it is, and I think what you're saying is really important. It's about having the kind of control where you're like, yeah, I can talk about my feelings, but I can also put them aside while the kids are having lunch and serve them up lunch and then go to the back and have a conversation with my wife about something that's bothered me. You know what I mean? Without it being this knee-jerk, I'm at the mercy of my emotions thing all the time, right? Like there needs to be that balance, like you're saying, and I do really appreciate that. And that's a fine line for me I struggle with, because I struggle with stuffing my emotions down and then exploding later. So I get into, well, I have to start saying how I feel. But then how I feel keeps coming out with a chip on my shoulder, and it's not really helping the situation. I'm just hurting people's feelings. So it's this fine line of figuring out the right time, and like you're saying, the right emotional and mental space that I can be in to say this, you know? But then even as I do that, sometimes the reaction I'm getting to what I'm trying to express triggers me, and suddenly I'm in the red again, and I have to stop and be like, whoa, okay, we're obviously not ready to talk about this, or I'm not. So, and that's it too, I think, is being okay to claim your own personal space, and just like when things get too heated, just being like, you know what, no one's winning here. I just need to take a walk. Now, I used to just slam the door and like walk out and just slam the door. But now in the last couple of years, I've been like, baby, I'm sorry, but this isn't going anywhere. I just need 10 minutes to walk around the block, you know, because before my wife felt abandoned when I just like slam the door and like walk, of course, you know, it's
right.
But it's like what you're saying, it's that balance. Like, yes, you can have guy feelings. You can have guy reactions. You can have these feelings. Feelings are never wrong. It's the reaction that you decide to take because of those feelings, right? So, yeah, man, I really like that. And I hadn't really heard the toxic versus, what was the word that was used? Toxic?
Virtuous.
Virtuous, yes. Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, man. Like it's not really discussed enough, and it's like it's important to discuss the toxic side of it, but we also have to let men know, like it is good at times to be able to push your emotions aside and deal with the task at hand properly.
Yeah,
you know, like it's a skill, you know, but it's also there is a toxic side to it where you never address it, or it comes out in a volatile manner, you know, and that's when it becomes toxic. But there is a virtuous way to use your emotions, or to let out your emotions, and that's what we need to discuss about, you know, like that's the conversations we need to have. There is a good way to do it. You know, so don't feel trapped all the time.
And I mean, and we don't even have to speak about that in like a general term. I mean, there's working out and then focusing on, you know, on what you're mad about while you're working out. That's a healthy way of pushing through that stuff. With sadness, I remember, I've had some pretty, you know, when my daughter passed away, she was, you know, just a baby, and like I had so much hurt and pain around it. When I finally went back to work, it would just like sneak up on me and just slap me in the face. I'd start crying in the middle of a construction site and just be like, I have to go hide somewhere, you know? And I remember my therapist saying to me, you know, a way you might want to deal with this is conjure it up when you're ready to. And I was like, what do you mean? She said, well, go in the bathroom, put on some sad music, turn the shower on, and think real hard about the thing that's making you cry and making you upset. And give it its space, give it its time, you know, and let that out and just let it go where you feel safe to do so. And then it's like a pressure valve for later. You have control over that emotion, you know, and maybe hitting a speed bag or taking a run or whatever it is enough to get the pressure valve, you know, like released, so that when you go to deal with the situation with the person you're dealing with, it's not popping off because you haven't expressed it any other way. You know what I mean? So there are real ways, real healthy ways of dealing with these strong emotions, and they're not necessarily a secret. You know, we know them. You know, there are good ways. So, yeah, man. Well, my brother, I think.
Like I could.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead,
bro. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I'm glad you shared that, you know, because it's like, I'm still definitely struggling with how to manage it and how to let it out and when to let it out, you know, and I'm like, to be honest, I'm scared to confront a lot of emotions like that, you know, like, so like it takes courage to do that.
Yeah. It
You know,
does.
so
And I think,
thanks
especially,
for sharing that.
yeah, man, no problem. And I think too, it's like it is hard to do that. It really is. But sometimes things in life are so heavy that you don't even have a choice. It just starts wrecking you.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And if your
yeah,
go-to response to pain is anger, then some of the most hurting dudes out there are the angriest assholes. Do you know what I mean? They are really hurting. And I
yeah,
think that's super important to remember, that whenever people are being crazy, like crazy abrasive, they're dealing with so much inside, and it's never about you. The Four Agreements talks about don't take things personally, never take anything
hmm,
personally, because it doesn't have. It's not you. It's whatever they're dealing with, and I think too, like, I don't know. I think like recognizing that you have your own private relationship with yourself that nobody else needs to know about. And whatever
yeah,
place you need to go to with yourself, like as long as you give yourself space to do that and time to do that, you will start to have a relationship with yourself that you get some insight from. But I think too often it's just like, oh, alone time, that's beer time. Oh, alone time, that's video game time. Oh, alone time, that's
yeah,
making beats time.
yeah,
Like that's just where
yeah,
we go.
yeah,
We're like,
yeah,
where's our distraction? But to sit and
exactly,
close your eyes and think about yourself in an objective or even subjective way, like how I affect other people or how am I affecting myself, we don't do enough of that, I think, in general.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, man, thank you so much for talking with me today. I feel like we could keep going on, but I am gonna
Yeah, my pleasure,
probably,
man.
yeah, man. And you said so much great stuff, and I'm looking forward to listening back. And yeah, man, I'll be posting this up in the next day or so. And yeah, super, super great talking with you, brother.
Likewise.
All right, man. Well, enjoy your isolation and quarantine. I know you're
I
working
will
though,
try.
eh?
I will
You're
try.
you're heading off to
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
Yeah, man. Well, that's
yeah.
encouraging to hear. I'm missing work. I'll be honest, man. I'm just like, I'm missing just that balance. We're talking about balance. There's such a balance to going to
Yeah,
work and coming home, So,
yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
all right, man. Well, I'll see you online, and yeah, you can find Darnell's Instagram. I can't remember if you go by your name or whatever, but on your Instagram, you got those jewels you're dropping. You got lots of great things to say on there. What is it? Just your name on Instagram, or I'm trying to remember. I can put the link at the bottom of this, but
It's at DP City
DP City.
on
Nice.
Instagram.
On
Yeah,
Instagram. So yeah, check out DP City on
yeah.
Instagram, and you get some really great thought jewels from my man here. I was listening to a few of them just the other day. All right, man. I'll catch up with you soon. Okay.
All right,
All right.
thanks a lot, bro.
All right, man. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.